before. Actually, they themselves admit that if drugs were smuggled past them, they wouldn't interfere. Why? That's another tough question. Now, what if Russia was to act selfishly and play in geopolitics, just like our opponents are used to doing? They got us involved in the war in Afghanistan and immediately began to provide help for those rebels, the Mujahideen. We could do the same now. We could support the rebels and fight against Americans. But it's not even in our people's minds. No one is going to do that. When I was there in 1989 and 1990, the production of drugs almost ceased, apart from in certain areas. Since then, it has increased by 44%. And all of the drug traffic goes through the city of Osh, where we want to establish our base, and Termes or other places. 90% of drugs from Afghanistan go to former Soviet republics. 80% of the world's drugs are produced in Afghanistan. They've outdone the South American countries such as Colombia. 30,000 young people in Russia die from drug use every year. And sadly, some of the leaders from the CIS countries don't really want to interfere. In other words, there are too many people who make money on this. I don't make anything up. Americans themselves admit that drugs are often transported out of Afghanistan on American planes. Drug trafficking in Afghanistan brings them about $50 billion a year, which fully covers the expenses tied to keeping their troops there. Essentially, they are not going to interfere and stop the production of drugs. They engage in military action only when they are attacked. They don't have any planned military action to eliminate the Mujahideen. Rather, they want to make the situation more unstable and help the Taliban to be more active. They even started negotiations with them, trying to direct them to the Central Asian republics, to destabilize the whole region, and to set up their bases there. One would think right now Russia is interested in cooperation with Americans. During Obama's visit, there was talk about providing air and ground corridors for Americans to supply their troops in Afghanistan. And some journalists even say now that it's good for Russia that Americans are in Afghanistan, that we need to help them because they are there to restrain the Mujahideen and keep them from attacking us. That's right, but the problem is they don't do anything of the kind.
If the Soviet troops hadn't left Afghanistan in 1989, do you think that the country would be different now? How would the presence of Soviet troops have affected Afghanistan's present?
Not so long ago, Najibullah made national reconciliation the foundation of his policy. It had had results before. There was really no need for the Soviet troops to remain in Afghanistan after 1990. Our troops left on the 15th of February. I arrived there with my group on the 7th. Although Gromov said that there were no soldiers left there after he left, but what about us? I met with the leaders of our main divisions, specialists, advisors. We all stayed there, and we were all Soviet soldiers at the time. I guess he said it for some political reason. The Soviet troops left, and the Najibullah regime actually grew stronger. The thing is, while the Soviet troops were there, the 7 or 8 rebel groups had one common enemy, the Soviet troops. They joined forces to fight against it. When the troops left, there was no common enemy left, so they started to fight with each other. Najibullah used this craftily in setting them up one against the other. He did it to remain in power even without the Soviet troops. The troops left. Russia had a change of leadership. And what happened? General Rudskoy went to Afghanistan and got in touch with the Mujahideen, those we fought against, those who held them captive. Kozyrev also took their side. But take democracy, for example, and the principle to support the countries with democratic processes underway. In Afghanistan, all women were made to wear burqas. It's forbidden for them to attend school or work. The Taliban have set up a reactionary regime. What kind of democracy is this? By the way, this happened after Mujahideen came to power. Flawed as it was, even with elements of totalitarianism, the regime suggested by Najibullah was far more progressive.